Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for taking the time. We chatted with some parents and a student about some of the concerns about the COVID-19 impacts on families. And one of the biggest impacts and a lot of concerns we heard from parents is the fact that they're worried about their kids going back to school. And that's why we've been fighting for funding at the federal level to support the return to school to make sure it's safe. And the biggest request that we're hearing from parents, the parents we spoke to today, and what we've heard from experts is that experts are saying they need smaller classroom sizes, that parents wanted to see smaller classroom sizes to ensure that we're doing everything possible to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to make sure kids are safe. In addition, we know that a lot of families are struggling with the impact of COVID-19, particularly the fact that it's impacted women so much. We know that the job participation rate for women right now is the lowest it's been in 30 years. That's 3 decades of gains that have been lost. And just today we heard from a parent who shared her own story before COVID-19 that years ago she had to make the difficult choice because it was so hard to find affordable childcare. She had to make the choice between staying at home to take care of her kids or and not being able to go back to work because she could not find childcare. And imagine how much harder that is now for parents. So we believe very firmly there can be no recovery without investments in childcare so that parents and particularly women can get back to work. We know that parents and students are worried about the impacts of COVID-19, and we've got a responsibility as a society to make the right choices. So we're calling on the federal government to invest in childcare so parents know that their kids can be safe and that there's a place for them to go. Make investments in schools to ensure that the experts and the parents who want to see small classroom sizes, that is achieved. Those are the things that we want to talk about today. And I'll just say that in French as well, and then I'll take your questions. Donc, encore aujourd'hui, on a parlé avec les parents pour entendre leurs inquiétudes. Et les étudiants et les parents ils ont peur pour l'avenir à cause de COVID-19. Et on a une responsabilité de s'assurer que le gouvernement fédéral finance les provinces, aide les provinces pour s'assurer qu'on suive les conseils des experts en matière de santé, on suive les conseils en matière de santé publique. Et le conseil, c'est de réduire les nombres des étudiants dans les classes. Donc ça, c'est quelque chose de tellement important. Les parents ont partagé ça. Mais aussi, on sait que pour l'impact de COVID-19 a touché les femmes plus que les hommes. Et ça, c'est complètement inacceptable, le fait que maintenant, la participation des femmes dans le milieu de travail est la pire dans 30 ans. Et pour régler ça, il faut investir dans les services de garde. Et c'est pourquoi encore on demande que le gouvernement fédéral investisse, finance les services de garde, aider les provinces pour mettre en place des mesures pour s'assurer qu'on a un assez niveau des services de garde pour s'assurer que les femmes peuvent retourner au travail. Ça, c'est primordial pour une économie durable. Il faut investir dans les services de garde. So with that, I'm ready to take any questions you might have.
So
Yes.
You're live now with CP24. Can we start off from the top?
Sure, yes. So I want to say that we had a conversation today with parents and with students. And parents are deeply concerned about return to school. And their concern is that the experts have made it clear that we need smaller classroom sizes. New Democrats have been fighting for smaller classroom sizes provincially, and at the federal level, we pushed and fought to push the federal government to deliver more funding to provinces, and it should go towards what the experts are asking for, what parents are asking for, which is smaller classroom sizes to protect kids, to make sure they're safe, and to ensure that parents have the confidence that their kids are safe at school. That's something very essential. We also heard a story which speaks to one of the realities of COVID-19, that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted women. The job participation rate of women is the lowest in 30 years. So any recovery, any just recovery to COVID-19 has to include funding for childcare. Every parent needs to be able to return to work and know that their kids are safe. Particularly women need to be able to go back to work. And to do that, the only way possible is ensuring that there's access to affordable childcare. So we're calling for that. We're calling for investments that are tied to the experts' advice, which is to make sure classrooms are smaller, as New Democrats have been fighting for, But in addition, we need investment in childcare so that parents, particularly women, can work. They can get back to work. That's what we've been asking for today. And I'm prepared to take any questions that you might have.
So let's talk about maybe personal feelings. Like, has anybody come up to you and given like their personal stories?
Yes, we've heard a couple of really personal stories. One around the fact that parents, one of the parents we spoke to today, lost her child in a really tragic scenario where her child was lost to a flu outbreak in a school. And this is before COVID-19. So this mom has experienced the loss as a result of a serious flu, and COVID-19 now is just making is reliving a lot of those experiences, and she's now become an advocate saying we need to protect our kids, we need to make sure they're safer. And one of the major requests for parents and for experts is that classroom sizes be smaller so kids are safer, there's less exposure. We heard from parents talking about the impacts to racialized communities, that some of the hotspots are communities that have been historically marginalized, and we need to make sure that there's investments to help out those communities that have been marginalized, that have been denied equal access to services, and ensure that there are smaller class sizes, at least in those communities. But we know this is something that should happen across all school boards, across the entire province, and in fact across the country. And then when it comes to childcare, we've heard really personal stories just today about a mom who was faced with the impossible decision years ago, before COVID-19, where when she had her child, she could not find affordable childcare and could not go back to work. And that is a reality right now. For far too many women, the impact of COVID-19 has been that women have not been able to get back to work, and we're seeing the lowest job participation rate for women in 30 years. To fix that, we need to invest in childcare. We need to make sure parents can go back to work, that their kids are safe, and particularly women are able to go back to work.
What would you like to see happen with the provincial government and the federal government moving forward on this issue?
What we want to see when it comes to any decisions around policies is that the policies are following the expert advice. The public health advice is really clear here, and parents are also feeling that classroom sizes should be smaller. But really, any decision we make with regard to COVID-19 has to be based on the science and based on the evidence and the expert advice from public health officials, and that's what they're calling for, smaller classroom sizes. We've got to do everything possible to make sure kids are safe, and so that we have a recovery which keeps us safe so we prevent a second wave, or at least reduce the impact of a second wave.
And even before this pandemic happened, there have been issues with childcare, daycare, two parents working, split shifts and everything else. What would you like to see change? Like, if ever there was a point to change society's mind, this is it. What would you like to see change?
Thank you for the question. I think it really helps us sum up what we're going through right now. What COVID-19 did, it didn't create the problems. It exposed the existing problems, because as you said, all those same problems were already there. People were already struggling to find childcare. Parents could not find affordable childcare. It was already a problem. But now with COVID-19, it's made that problem even worse. It's exposed the existing problems and heightened their impact. And so what I want to see now is people realize that we can't get through this alone. We can't fight a global pandemic on our own. The only way we fight it is by coming together and taking care of one another. And I hope now is the opportunity for us to say, well, how can we take better care of one another? One of the things we can do is we can invest in things like childcare, invest in education, make sure our kids are safe and receiving the best education, make sure parents can go to work and that their kids are able to go to a safe and affordable, accessible childcare. On top of that, we want to see investments to make sure our healthcare is better. So we want to take care of people better. We want to fight for people. And I think now is the moment where we can make the decisions to change things for the better. I've said before, we can't go back to normal, because normal was a scenario where people were not getting the access to healthcare, the access to childcare. They were not getting the help they needed. And more than ever, we need to go forward to something better, where we take better care of one another. Any questions in Punjabi as well? I can show my trilingual status. हाँ जी ठीक है जी। ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਫਿਕਰ ਹੈ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਬੱਚੇ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਫਿਕਰ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਐਕਸਪਰਟਸ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਕਲਾਸਰੂਮ ਸਾਈਜ਼ ਛੋਟੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਘੱਟ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਕਲਾਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਤੋਂ ਨਿਊ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟਿਕ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਐਂਡਰਿਊ ਹੋਰਵਿਥ ਨੇ ਇਹੀ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਥੇ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵਿਖੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ MPP ਗੁਰਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਨੁਮਾਇੰਦਗੀ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕਲਾਸਰੂਮ ਸਾਈਜ਼ ਛੋਟੇ ਹੋਣ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਬੱਚੇ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੋਂ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਖੇਤਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਇੱਥੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਤੱਕ ਜਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕਲਾਸਰੂਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਕੂਲਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਕੂਲ ਵਰਕਰਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਹ ਮਦਦ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਕੂਲ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਹੋਣ ਨਾਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਚਾਈਲਡ ਕੇਅਰ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਹੁਣ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਵਾਪਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਕੰਮ 'ਤੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਘਰੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੋ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਕੋਨਮੀ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਵਾਈਵ ਕਰਨਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿ ਚਾਈਲਡ ਕੇਅਰ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਇਨ ਜਨਰਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਉਹ ਇੰਨਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵਧੀਆ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਪਰੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਿਮਾਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਪੇਡ ਸਿਕ ਲੀਵ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਹੂਲਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੱਧ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ Yes, for sure.
Organization shutting down.
I figured there'd be at least one question on that. I just want to point out with respect to the WE scandal that the shutting down of WE's operations highlights the fact that they were in need of a bailout. And it really bolsters the argument, as we've been saying, that the Liberal government was really just trying to help out an organization that was closely aligned with them. They were trying to help themselves out. And as a result, students suffered because the funding could have directly gone to student grants, could have gone to Canada Summer Jobs programs, could have gone to reducing debt for students that are in debt. There could have been immediate supports that went directly to students instead of a program which is clearly designed to help out close friends and to enrich members of the Liberal government instead of helping students. And on top of that, because the Prime Minister shut down Parliament, right now we're up against a deadline where many people are going to lose their CERB at the end of September. And without Parliament, there are millions of Canadians, at least 1.5 million Canadians, that will not be able to have any supports because there's no legislation in place to make sure they get help. So we're calling on Prime Minister Trudeau to recall Parliament earlier so that we can put in place legislation to help out those 1.5 million Canadians at least who will have no help come the end of September. That is wrong and they need help. Yeah. Donc, avec le scandale de WE, ce qu'on a vu, c'est exactement ce qu'on a dit. Le fait que le gouvernement libéral a effectivement essayé d'aider leurs amis proches, leurs petits amis. Et c'est exactement ça qu'on réalise avec tous les documents qui étaient sortis et aussi avec le fait qu'ils vont arrêter leurs affaires ici au Canada. Ça montre, c'est un autre exemple de preuve qui montre que c'est exactement ça. C'était une bail-out, c'était un essai d'aider leurs amis proches. En plus, c'était les étudiants qui ont été blessés à cause de ça parce que si le gouvernement libéral a voulu vraiment aider les étudiants, il aurait pu augmenter les services existants, les services qui existent avec les financements pour les étudiants qui vont à l'école secondaire ou qui vont à l'université ou les collèges. Et on aurait pu augmenter les programmes qui existent si on a vraiment voulu aider les étudiants. Et en plus, à cause du fait que le gouvernement libéral et le Premier ministre Trudeau a fermé la Chambre de communs, on n'a pas maintenant l'occasion d'y aller pour mettre en place, proposer de nouveaux projets de loi pour aider les presque 1,5 million de Canadiens et Canadiennes qui vont être dans une situation où leur CERB va arrêter et il n'y a aucun appui pour les aider. On sait qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui ne peuvent pas retourner au travail et ils ont besoin d'aide maintenant. Ça, c'est pourquoi on demande maintenant que le gouvernement libéral retourne plus souvent, plus tôt au Parlement pour proposer un projet de loi pour aider les Canadiens qui vont être dans une situation de péril sans avoir accès à la PCU.
Colonel, how prepared is the NDP for fall election?
We are ready, but it's not our goal. Our goal is to help out families. Our goal is to do exactly what we've been doing throughout this pandemic, which is to get help to people in need. And right now, the major priority is with CERB ending, we know that there's at least 1.5 million Canadians that cannot access the new EI or CERB when it ends. So our goal is to make sure those Canadians are getting supports. We know that small businesses need to continue to have support. And at this time, what we've seen is the massive corporations like Amazon and Walmart have made record profits. They profited during this pandemic, but small businesses have been forced to shut down. That is wrong, and that is what we're going to continue to fight against. We want to see help go to working people, to small businesses. We need supports to be there so that we don't see this wealth inequality go even further and further apart. And so we need to do that work. And our goal isn't to find a way to make government fall, but our goal is to lift up people.
Have you had a conversation with the Prime Minister about what you want to hear in the throne speech?
I haven't had a direct conversation with the Prime Minister, but I'm very confident that Prime Minister Trudeau and the Liberal government know what we want. We put it out in the public domain. We've talked about three major things. One is we know we need a better social safety net. We need to make sure people are safe, and if they can't go to work, there's paid sick leave in place, that when people are unable to work, that the EI system works for all Canadians. Right now it only works for about 40%. We need to make sure EI is there for every Canadian, whether you're freelance, contract, you work precariously, everyone needs access to support in the social safety net. In addition, we need to see improvements to our healthcare system. We need to see universal pharmacare. When people lost their jobs, they lost their benefits, they lost their ability to buy medication. In a pandemic, the idea that Canadians could not afford the medication is so wrong. And so that's why we're going to continue to push for that. And we want to see a just recovery. The recovery has to be centered around people. And that means investing directly in communities to make them more livable and to help us fight the climate crisis. One example would be to invest in public transit. We know that transportation is a major cost for climate change, for climate crisis. If we invest in public transit, we create local jobs, and we also help reduce emissions. So these are some of the major things we want to see happen. And immediately we want to see students safe in schools, and we want to see access to childcare be a priority. So the government already knows our priorities, and we look forward to seeing those priorities reflected in the throne speech. But if the government continues down a path where they're focused on themselves, getting caught up in scandals, and hurting Canadians, we're ready to explore any option. In French, donc, on n'a pas parlé avec le Premier ministre, mais on a partagé dans le domaine public nos priorités. On veut augmenter les services sociaux pour s'assurer que si n'importe qui fait face des problèmes avec leur emploi, que l'assurance emploi travaille pour tout le monde. Maintenant, ça travaille seulement pour 40% des Canadiens et Canadiennes. On veut changer ça, on veut améliorer ça. En plus, on veut voir des augmentations pour les services de santé, les financements de santé, et en particulier, on veut voir une assurance médicaments universelle et publique. C'est quelque chose qu'on peut réaliser et ça va aider tout le monde. Et finalement, avec qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour l'avenir, pour créer pour stimuler l'économie, et on doit concentrer nos affaires sur les gens, sur monsieur, madame, tout le monde. Et on peut faire ça avec les investissements qui augmentent, qui améliorent la qualité de vie et qui réduisent les émissions de gaz à effet de serre et qui fait face à la crise climatique. On peut, par exemple, faire les investissements dans le transport en commun pour créer les emplois locaux et en même temps, on peut réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre, quelque chose qui va faire face à la crise climatique ensemble avec la crise économique qui existe maintenant. Donc, on a déjà partagé ces idées. Le gouvernement libéral sait qu'on veut voir les investissements dans les services de garde et on va entendre ce que le gouvernement dit dans le discours de Tron. Mais plus que ça, on veut voir des actions concrètes pour faire face à ces problèmes. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to the local member of Provincial Parliament for being here, Brampton Singh. Thank you so much. Merci. Dhanyavad.